Right, good morning everyone. Thank you all for being here at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning. I appreciate that. I'll try and make it worth your while. So yeah, that's me. I'm Paul Johnson. I'm going to be talking a little bit today about an environment that I'm using to try and help me to be more productive when I'm actually coding. Can everyone hear me okay at the back? Is that right? Yeah, okay. Right. So a little over a year ago I started a new job, and it was a nice change for me in that this job was with a small startup company, and I pretty much spent my entire time coding, and had very few meetings, and I don't have to fill out many reports, and I don't have to manage people. I'm basically sitting at a computer coding, so I thought it'd be worth my while trying to make this a sensible environment where I could work productively. So that's what I'm talking about. Come on in everyone, find your seats. Okay, so obviously this is what works for me. The idea here is I'm going to say some things, and hopefully for some of them you'll say, well, that's excellent, I'm going to do that. And for some you'll say, oh, that's a fairly good idea, but I need to change it a bit for how I work. And for some you'll probably say, that's a load of rubbish, and throw fruit or something. Don't throw fruit. The idea here is that if you're in a similar sort of situation, you write some code, a lot of code, and you have some sort of control, a measure of control over your environment. If you're in a bank with a completely tied down environment, most of these things aren't going to be very useful for you, unfortunately. So, first thing, I'm working mostly from home. I go into the office 1 day a week or so. If you're going to be sitting down at the desk, you need to make sure that you keep yourself comfortable and that you're not damaging your body and your health. I like to have an L-shaped desk, and I sort of sit right in the middle of it, and a comfortable chair that I recline at 135 degrees, and I sort of lie back, and I put my feet up, and I work, and I have the monitors up fairly high. And I read a report recently that said reclining at 135 degrees was actually quite good for your back. So I was pleased to read that, but you can probably find reports that say anything if you want to justify your behaviour. I have a couple of dual 24-inch monitors. The screen space is really important, I think. You want to be able to see loads of stuff. You don't want to be flicking between windows if you can help it. This isn't actually my desk, but I do have a couple of Dell monitors like this. One's exactly the same one. I liked it, so I bought another one a few years later. You want a decent keyboard, comfortable keyboard. This is actually the keyboard that I use. And it's got programmable keys on it, so I can program one touch to do various things that I want to do. It's got multimedia keys, so that when I've got the music playing and someone Skypes me, I can quickly turn it off. And it's backlit for when you're working at night. And most importantly for me is the insert, home, del, and end keys are in that formation because I program those to move between different terminal windows and stuff, left and right, which I'll show more later. But you want a comfortable keyboard because you're going to be spending all day tapping things on it. Also a decent mouse. Sometimes I don't use the mouse too much, but sometimes you just need a decent mouse. I use that. I always play music, not always. I mostly play music when I'm working, different music with different things. Every so often when I need to think a lot, I turn everything off and go quiet. So I bought myself some decent speakers, but if you're in an office, you probably want a pair of headphones, yeah, to try and just isolate yourself when you really need to concentrate on your working. Again, these are the ones I have. And decent sound, but you don't want to leak sound because your co-workers will get cross with you. And you want to make sure they're comfortable so you're not bothered by them. And then hardware. I'm going through this fairly fast because I don't have any time to linger on anything because I've only got 20 minutes. And then the idea here is just to give you a sort of an overview and then maybe you'll think, oh, actually that's interesting, and then go into something a bit more detail perhaps. The actual hardware that you use nowadays isn't too important in terms of processors, and certainly for development work, graphics cards and things like that. But you want something that's quiet if it's in the same room as you. You want lots of RAM. I want lots of RAM anyway, primarily because I run virtual machines. More on that later. And SSDs are really good because you don't want to be waiting around for disks. Right, yeah, operating systems. I always work in a virtual machine nowadays. And the reason I do that is it just abstracts you away from host operating systems and hardware and problems like that. It's easy to make a snapshot of a virtual machine and roll back if you want to do an upgrade and something doesn't work. You can easily copy it to another machine if you need to. Fairly easy to set up. I've got some scripts and copy and paste things just to set them up. So that works well for me. I use VirtualBox because it's free and it works well. I used to use VMware. It doesn't really matter too much as long as whatever VM software can sort of put you in a full screen mode, so that you think you're actually working on that machine. For a host, it doesn't really matter if you've got a virtual machine. It doesn't matter what's running underneath it. For the client, I tend to use Ubuntu, but it probably doesn't make too much difference as long as it's something that sort of keeps reasonably up to date, but not too bleeding edge that things break. You want to get your security fixes, but you don't want to be getting software that breaks your tool chain. Right, now on to... Right, so window managers. I like to use a tiling window manager, and the reason is just to fill up the space on the screen and to be able to move between different blocks. This is basically the setup I have when I work. On the left, I've got something. Well, that one there is sort of showing marked and SSI. And then on the right-hand side, where I work, there's a Vim session there, and I tend to keep it set up like that. I'm happy with it. It works well. It's easy to move about using the keyboard. This is Notion, which is what I use, which sort of came on from Ion. Awesome and Xmonad are both pretty good tiling window managers as well. Terminal emulator. You want a decent terminal emulator. I use URXVT. The U there is important because that's for Unicode, and you want something that will display your Unicode well. I used to use Xterm. I can't remember why I changed. I think it may have been something to do with Unicode, but I think on OS X, iTerm 2 is the one of choice. But basically, you want something that's going to just show everything well and not get in your way. Terminal multiplexers. I don't know how many people use terminal multiplexers, but I find it really useful. It's sort of like it's almost like a sort of a window manager for your terminal session. You can have different windows that you can move between two in the same terminal, and different panes. There's 4 there. I think this is one of my log windows from one of the bits of work that I do. So I use TeamUps. That line at the bottom there is power line, which gives you all sorts of information about what windows you have available and various other bits of information about the machine that you're on. This resolution was just right before Mark plugged his computer in. Right, and I use TeamUps Inator, which is a configuration for your TeamUps sessions. So you can set up and say I want various windows and I want various grids, and I want to run these commands in, and when I set everything up, so you can just set up and get going. Screen's good as well. I used to use Screen, but I prefer TeamUps nowadays. You'll be spending a lot of time in your shell, so you need to choose a decent shell, and you need to learn how to use it properly if you want to save yourself effort. I use Z shell. I've been using it, must be about 20 years or so now, and it has lots of features. that's a bit too small to see, but the prompt is all configured there to show things like which Git branch I'm in and whether Git's clean or dirty, and which version of Perl I'm using from Perl and things like that. I think Bash can pretty much do all this stuff nowadays. Shell can still do some extra stuff. So if you if you haven't thought about looking beyond Bash, think about having a look at Shell and optimise ZSH is a sort of you can use it to configure and mix and match various bits and pieces to set up aliases and to completion and all sorts of stuff for things that you might want. So it's really useful to get to know your shell well. Fonts, yeah, you're going to be looking at your screen all day long and looking at code probably. You want to choose a font that's easy on your eyes, and then you're not going to get muddled up between ones and L's and capital I's, for example. So you want a monospace programming font. I chose Inconsolata, which is that one up there, which comes from there. There are various programming fonts around. These slides are up on my website, by the way, so you can have a look and pick out anything that was interesting later on. But yeah, pick a decent font that's easy on the eyes and helps you. You want a good colour scheme, and I use Solarized Dark, which is that's a scheme that someone else has created and I can just use. But you want something that's easy on your eyes again, and also can help show the difference between the various things which are highlighting. I also use Flux, which that controls your colour temperature, and the idea is that at night time it gets a bit darker and reduces the eye strain, maybe helps you to sleep if you've been hacking late at night or something. Yeah. Use source code control. If I imagine pretty much everyone is. If you're not using Git nowadays, you probably need to have a fairly good reason why you're not. It's basically standard now, I think. So you could be using HG and you could be using other legacy systems, but if you're starting anything new, it's sort of hard to look beyond why you wouldn't be using Git. Learn how to use it well. Learn how to make it work for you rather than fighting it when you need to do a merge or who knows what. Set up aliases to go with your workflow. Yeah, there's something called TIG, which displays the tree and lets you integrate, lets you investigate stuff on the command line. I have an alias set up, GL for git log, which shows a nice tree, which is probably the command I run most times in the day. So just learn how to use it well. Right, editor. Yes, you need a decent editor. You need a programmable editor that's going to help you doing your work. I use Vim. Emacs is pretty good, I've heard. Padre, I've never used, but people tell me is good. And I think there are decent editors on Windows and OS X. I'm not sure you have to buy them or whatever. But anyway, the point is you need a programmable editor, and you need to program it and set it up to help you doing your work. You're going to spend most of the day typing stuff into your editor. You want to make that as easy and useful as possible. The way that works in Vim is mostly through using plugins. Lots of people have written nice plugins. I'm going to talk about a few which I use. But first of all, there's a system called Pathogen for managing plugins. There are other systems as well, but this is the one I use. And you can just you can do a git clone as a submodule, and Pathogen will just pick stuff up. So that works quite nicely. Solarize just to get the colours in the editor. That sort of goes without saying. That's a pretty simple thing. There's this one called Airline, which gives a status line. That's too small to see, really, I'm afraid. But a status line at the bottom of your Vim, and sorry, I'm creeping up. It's only when I'm looking this way I notice you. And that says things like which mode I'm in. It gives information about which Git branch I'm on, what changes I've made, the file I'm in, which function that the cursor's in, that it's Perl mode, that it's a UTF-8 file with Unix line endings and various bits and pieces. So that the idea is you get lots of information that you can see without having to move around and do too much. uComplete is a completion function that basically here I'm typing in and it's showing me various completions that I could choose, and I can just tab or use the arrows to select one of them. uComplete is quite nice. You don't have to type in just the prefix, you can type in sort of various letters. Like if I typed in an F here, it would just show check files and then check file and check files. It's quite fast. It's written in Python, I think, so you need Python installed in a fairly recent version of Vim. It doesn't do everything I want, but it's I find this one very useful. Fugitive is basically Git inside Vim. Anything you want to do with Git, you can do with Fugitive. This is the blame window here, and you can just click on one of the commits, and it will expand what happened in that commit, and you can search through things, and you can do your check-ins and everything in there. I tend to still do lots of stuff from the command line, but you can do it all inside Vim if you want to. Git gutter, you probably can't see it on the left-hand side of the Vim. It shows me in real time which lines I've changed or added or deleted in the file, and you can navigate between them, which is often quite handy. Signature shows your Vim marks. I think there's an M there and an A or something, so you can jump to those and it shows you where you're going to jump to. Without that, I always tend to forget where the marks are, so I've not used them. And then there's another bunch here. Tag bar displays tags in the right-hand side, so you can jump to different functions. Easy commenting in various different languages. Tree for looking at the file system and selecting files. Snipmate, which is like TextMate. So if you're starting a subroutine, or for example, you write sub and hit tab, and it fills in a whole bunch of stuff for you. Or if you're writing for loops and sorts of things, you can set that up. It's all configurable. Surround. Okay, I haven't got the time to talk about these sorts of things, but and debug cover. I have to talk about that because that's mine. You can show your code coverage information in the gutter as well, so you know which bits you need to work on. You need to be able to connect to machines. So SSH, of course, is the main tool there. Learn how to configure it to make it useful for you, and set up a daemon on port 443 so you can get into stuff through in places where people don't really want you to. Mosh is very useful. It's similar to SSH. It works over UDP, so it's very good for bad connections that keep dropping. It just connects you back into the same place you were before. And PuTTY is actually surprisingly good on Windows. And there's also a version of PuTTY which doesn't put anything in the registry, so you can have it on a flash drive and plug it into someone's machine. For communications, I use MUT and IRSSI, all command line stuff. And when you want to mess about on Twitter, you can do that as well in Twerk within the IRSSI window. And I think I'm pretty much out of time. So yeah, so good. So I'm getting to my conclusions, which is at the right time. So the point here is, I mean, that was all far too quick to really take anything in and learn a great deal. But hopefully it gave you ideas about how to set up your environment, because when you're needing to work, you don't really want to be spending time doing things that the computer can do for you. You don't want to be spending time thinking about does this function name have an underscore in it, or which file does this particular function live in, or how do I do this in Git, or whatever. You want to be spending your time thinking about the actual real problems that you're trying to solve. You've got an algorithm that needs to solve, you need to sort out for something. You don't really want to be spending time worrying about the act of programming. It's more the abstract, meta act of programming you want to be spending your brain power on. You can be more productive, and also I find it's far more enjoyable when your environment's set up to help you rather than to fight against you. I don't really have time for any questions, but I'm happy to talk to anyone afterwards about any of this. I was hoping to get all my RC files up in Git, so you can all go and look at anything you wanted to, but of course I didn't get around to that. But I did get the slides finished. Yes, sir. Oh, I do have a bit of time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. I do have a little bit of time for questions, so if anyone, yeah?
Hello. Thank you for that talk, that was amazing. I think one of the best things about this sort of talk is that your slides will go on the internet and we'll be able to search for it later.
That they are on there, yeah.
So thank you for that. One thing I saw missing from your set of Vim plugins was in Emacs, being an Emacs user.
Yeah.
MyMake is really cool because you can compile the code on the fly and show the compilation errors as you go.
Right.
Do you have anything like that?
Fly check, so you can see.
Excellent. Right, I will take that. Do you have anything like that for Vim?
Yeah, there is stuff. There's a make command in Vim that you set up to do what you want, and then I've got it configured so I hit F5 and it goes off and does whatever I need to and shows the errors in a window underneath that you can move along. So yeah, there's a lot of configuration that I didn't have time to talk about, but yeah, there is stuff that does that, of course, because you want to just quickly press a button and get it working properly. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Thanks. Those tips are really useful, but one thing that I find the most productive is a step-by-step debugger that opens up the files as the line code is reached in them.
Right.
Do you have an equivalent of that?
Personally, I don't, because my debugging is more printf style. So I don't, and I don't know if there is.
Emacs has got a debug mode, and I'll be showing that in the debugging tutorial later on.
Okay. I choose a GUI one, which is Komodo.
So
I use a GUI version, which is Komodo, but you have to pay for that. So, I mean, my company Netaport bought that for me.
Just live in Emacs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think probably Vim users envy that to a certain extent. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Did you talk at all about how you commit and distribute your environment, so sharing between multiple environments, or do you just keep one place and hope that it doesn't die?
I have it pretty much in Git, but I don't have it. I have it in a private Git repository on my server, I was hoping to sort of take out any personal bits, any passwords that may be in there or whatever, I don't know, and stick it up on GitHub for people to have a look at. But I didn't get around to it. But yeah, I do have it, so I can just easily just check it out on a new machine.
I have a desktop at home with all my virtual machines, but the problem I have is when I go to the office, I have to sort it. How do you solve that?
I solve that by having SSH. Oh well, I keep the virtual machine running and SSH into it. That's probably not the solution you're looking for. I suppose you could use VNC, or I think some with some you can over the web you can have a port that displays the whole thing.
Yeah, I do use PSSH, but I tend not to have the whole network. So I guess
I suppose that comes under learning how to use SSH or port forwarding or a VPN, I suppose, or something. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of related to that really. That's one of the advantages of terminal multiplexers, is that everything lives in one. As long as you can connect to one session, then you'll sort it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the reason for having my mail in Martin via SSI, so that once I can SSH into a machine somehow, everything I need to do is there. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Have you experimented with putting it all on Vagrant so that you get the automatically built packetized that copies all your config in?
I haven't, but that's the next step, I think, is to do something like that. Yeah, certainly that would, and certainly if you needed to have your environment in a number of different places, that would.
I think
that would be sensible.
plays into this a bit.
Sorry?
Boxing, which is the renewed thing from the GitHub sort of chain where they can.
Right.
What my question earlier was, basically, are you using anything like that to distribute it around?
Okay, yeah. No. Okay, last question then.
Yeah, like you, I use virtual machines as well, and I use Debian with the GNOME environment,
Right.
Which unfortunately doesn't have tiling built in, but I found a good GitHub project called QuickTile, which gives you tiling in the GNOME environment.
Okay.
Just thought I'd mention it.
All right, lovely. Okay. Okay, thank you everyone for your interest and for your questions. As I say, I'm around if you want to ask any questions.